vobiscum,
et cum spiritu tuo.
oremus, exaurinas Domine Sancte Paterum Deus et Deus, et mitere denieri Sanctum Angelum Tuum de celis, qui custodia phobia furia desiderata defendat, omnes hominantes in hoc habitaculo, de Christum Dominum nostrum.
Amen. Spiritus
quesumus Domini mentis et corporis devende periculis, et intercedende beate gloriosa semper Virgine Dei Genitice Maria, cum arias fiers apostris tuis Petra Paulo, aquae beate Hugo, et omnibus sanctis salutum nobis privo et benignus et pacem, ut destructis avas et adibus, et erroribus universus ecclesia tuis et corruptibus serviat libertate. Deus pendulum respuis, sed quantum vis peccandibus per penitentiam die miseratione placaris, respice propitius ad preces humilitatis nostrae, et illumina cor nostra, tutta tua valeamus simple recepta, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum Filium Tuum, qui tecum vivere regna, in unitate Spiritus Sancti Deus, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen. Lectio Christi Apostoli Apostoli Fratres niscimus provi, in staria coruntum, esquidem corum, sed unus accibit gravium, sicurite ut comprehendabis, omnis autem guina cum ne contendit, ab omnibus se abstinet, et ille quirum ut corruptibilem coronam accipiam, nos atem incorruptam, ego iridor seca coro, non quasi in incertum, sic unionam quasi ere perperans, sed castigo corpus, et in servitutem predigo, ne forte cum arris predicare nipse reprobus efficear, norum enim vos ignorare fratres, omnium patres nostri omnes sub nube fuerunt, et omnes mare transierunt, et omnes in Moise baptisate sunt in nube et in mari, et omnes eambem est cum spiritarem amando caverunt, et omnes eiundem orum spiritarem viverunt autem de spiritare consequenteus Petra autem erat Christus, sed non in pluribus, eorum bene placitum est Deo.
Amen.
vos in via mea, nectorius confuerit, davo vobis, iliatum avieum, Iterum ad autem exit sextum et nonorum, et fecit similite. Circumdecimum verro exit, et in venitaria stantes et digitiris, quid extaris tota die ociosi, dicam Dei, qui aneonos conduxit. Digitiris, ite vos in via mea, cum serratum fatum esse digit Dominus venie, procuratoris suo, voco pararius et rediris percedem, incipiens a novissimi suspirat primus, cum venis in ergo qui, circumdecimum forum venerant, accepterunt singulos denarios, medientes autem et primi, habitatis sunt corpus, essent acceptori, acceperunt autem et ipse singulos denarios, recipientes murmurabum, adversus facta familias decentes, in novissimium ora fecerum, et parresitus nobis fecisti, qui portabimus a fondus tiei, et estus, ad ille respondens une oram dixit, amice, non faci optivi ignoria, non est denario conveniti pecum, tolle quod tuum est et vade, lovatam et uic novissimo dare sicut et tibi, ad non lice mici, murmuro facere, a nobulos tuas necomes, cui ego bonus ussum, sic eram novissimi primi, et a primi novissimi, mutinum sunt vocati, facivero electi.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
Please be seated. A couple of brief announcements for everybody. First off, that for anyone who has tithed in a manner which is able to be recorded by us, there are tax donation letters in the vestibule. There is also a bag in the vestibule to collect old palms from this past year, which will be burned and made into ashes for this Ash Wednesday. If you'd like your palms to be disposed of in this way, please be sure to have them in as soon as possible, because at some point the bag will go away and be burned. The epistle for Septuagesima Sunday is taken from the epistle of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brethren, know you not that they that run in the race all run indeed, but one receiveth the prize. So run that you may obtain. And every one that striveth for the mastery refraineth himself from all things. And they indeed that they may receive a corruptible crown, but we are an incorruptible one. I therefore so run, not as at an uncertainty, I so fight, not as one beating the air, but I chastise my body and bring it into subjection, lest perhaps when I have preached to others, I myself should become a castaway. For I would not have you ignorant, brethren, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all in Moses were baptized in the cloud and the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. And they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. But with the most of them God was not well pleased. Thus far, please stand for the Holy Gospel. Continuation of the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. At that time Jesus spoke to his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like to a householder who went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And having agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into the vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing in the marketplace idle. And he said to them, Go you also into my vineyard, and I will give you what you shall be just. And they went their way. And again he went out about the 6th and the 9th hour, and did in like manner. But about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing, and he saith to them, Why stand you here all the day idle? They said to him, Because no man hath hired us. He saith to them, Go you also into my vineyard. And when the evening was come, the Lord of the vineyard saith to his steward, Call the laborers and pay them their hire, beginning from the last even to the first. When therefore they were come, that came about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first also came, they thought that they should receive more. They also received every man a penny. And receiving it, they murmured against the master of the house, saying, These last have worked but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal to us, that have borne the burden of the day and the heats. And he answering said to one of them, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst thou not agree with me for a penny? Take what is thine, and go thy way. I will also give to the last even as to thee. Or is it not lawful for me to do what I will? Is thy eye evil because I am good? So shall the last be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few are chosen. Thus far the words of today's Holy Gospel. Please be seated. I chastise my body and bring it under subjection. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Today is Septuagesima Sunday, and so we have this stark change in the spirit of the liturgy that comes to us. Having gone through the time of Christmas and the Epiphany tide, all of a sudden we arrive at Septuagesima, and not only have the vestments changed and the Gloria and the Alleluia are gone, but also it speaks something different now. The liturgy calls us now to fasting and mortification. St. Paul, in his epistle, points out that he indeed must do this to himself. And this is important. St. Paul, in so much of his writings, is very practical in what he gives to the people who he is instructing by the way of his epistles. He points out that he must do penance lest he become a castaway, even though he preaches to others. It's easy for them to look at him and see all his efforts, all of his travels, all that he has suffered at the hands of others, the words that he speaks that are true because they are given to him by Christ, the virtues that he emulates in his life, and for them to think that he is somehow above them. It's easy for them to look at him and almost place him on a pedestal. But St. Paul, when we look at what he speaks of now, he talks about subjecting his flesh, chastising his body, not because he is trying to be proud and to show off in some sort of way, but rather to do exactly the opposite, to be humble, to show them that even though they have come and they have sat before him and they have listened to the words that he has said and they look highly upon him, that he is a man, that he is one that is subject to fall, and that in order to prevent doing so, he subjects his flesh to a sting so that it may always be under the control of his will. That no matter how many spiritual gifts he has received as being chosen by Christ as an apostle, that he could always cast it away, lose it all, and forego heaven if he were to give in to his simple base passions and search after the corruptible reward. He illustrates this with practical means throughout his epistle. First, he shows us that every one of us is capable of following in his footsteps, sacrificing, doing penance, doing the things that are difficult in order to obtain our eternal reward. It is because we have already done so for lesser things. He points out the example of the man who runs in the race, and that he forgoes everything in his life, so that he may singularly focus on that one goal, that he may devote himself entirely through training, through efforts, through diet, through time sacrificed, so he may be the fastest, that he may inch out that extra little bit of time, and thus do all of this which is hard in order to gain what? In those days, it was the laurel wreath placed upon his head, simple vines which would corrupt and decay in time, and a little bit of praise. We could see this in our own lives, even if it not be one of athletic prowess or reward of some sort of trophy, but rather that we know that all of us, at times throughout our lives, we work hard, we make sacrifices, we do what is difficult to gain something temporal. We study and work in school so that we may set ourselves up for a future in the business world. We work hard at our jobs and labor for a company so that we can get some sort of financial gain, a paycheck at the end of the day, that we may be recognized, so we may obtain a promotion, that we do work and labor and hard application of our skills in order that we may sometimes have that pat on the back, that recognition for what we have accomplished or what we have produced. Even if it is our own self-adulation, that feeling of a job well done at the end of a long, hard effort. We seek after ease of life, greater comfort, and greater success. These things in themselves are not evil. These things in themselves are not wrong. And yes, indeed, in some ways, as long as it's not based in pride, there are aspects that are, at least from a natural point, laudable in that regard. And yet, when we are honest at the reflection that stares back at us in the mirror, we look to all we sacrifice towards these things, we can see likewise that when times like Lent approach us, that we can easily look upon it with a bit of dread, or that the sacrifices that we make, which are by themselves comparably small to what we do in order to gain something temporal, that these sacrifices can become for us a great burden, that it causes us to complain or to falter or to forgo altogether. But it is those efforts that are made towards a reward far greater than anything that we can gain by the sacrifices in our daily lives towards those temporal ends. It is that eternal and infinitely greater reward of heaven that we seek after. And so, it is why it is important to have for ourselves spiritual exercises which are done, because it keeps before our mind what is the end that we are seeking after. The thing we don't see right now, here, but we know by our faith awaits us at the end of our life if we run the race to its end. Secondly, St. Paul gives us not only the illustration of the athlete, but he then turns it to something more pious and gives a scriptural reference for us to look upon, to link that greater emphasis to the importance of sacrifice. The Israelites, when they are delivered from Egypt, follow after Moses. They are the chosen people of God. They have been sent into exile as punishment for their ways, but God has not abandoned them, and so he delivers them. But in doing so, he has them pass through multiple phases that are to try the Israelites themselves, and yet also to be left for us as a spiritual significance for us thousands of years later. We see that the Israelites are delivered out of Egypt, delivered from the hands of the soldiers that follow after them, because they are able to pass through the Red Sea. And in this crossing, we have a prefigurement, because we are the chosen people now. We are chosen by the way of faith, as they were chosen by blood. And so as the Israelites passed to safety through the waters of the Red Sea, so too we pass into the safety of sanctifying grace through the waters that are poured upon us in the sacrament of baptism. From there, as they travail across the desert, they have great wants, necessity of providing strength for themselves. And this is done by manna from heaven. It rains down upon them. They are able to collect it up and to consume it. God provides for them so that they may be strengthened for their long journey that would lay ahead of them. In like manner, we too are find for ourselves strength that comes down from heaven. There, as manna upon our altar, the bread of life itself, Christ himself, in the sacrifice of the Holy Mass, in every good and holy and worthy communion that we make. This is the strength of our souls, that increase in sanctifying grace that we find provided to us gratuitously. And we see with the Israelites that they also are quenched in their thirst by means of water from a rock which is spoken to and struck by Moses. And this is representative of the blood that flows forth from the Sacred Heart of Christ on the cross. that it quenches our thirst with sanctifying grace. It satisfies what is lacking by our own sinfulness. And yet, despite all of these treasures, of the 6,000 Israelites that leave Egypt, only 2, Joshua and Caleb, are permitted to enter into the promised land. Why? Because the Jews were fickle. They were so easily distracted. They were so weak in disposition. They so often complained. They so often desired for temporal pleasures. Moses leaves them for a short period and they begin to worship false gods. They seek after the immediate comforts of the flesh and lose track of what they are working their way across the desert for in the first place. And no, it's not meant by this illusion for us to think that salvation is hardly attainable and that it is something that is so far away from us that most of us will not achieve it. Remember, while only 2 reached the Holy Land, Moses himself was counted amongst the ones who didn't. And we still look to him as that great prophet and that holy man whom we honor. Rather, it is meant to be an illustration to us instead that it is a reality that can be lost if we do not curb our natural appetites, if we do not restrain our corporal desires. If we do not do these things, then we become slaves to these things. And we serve them over God. And we can, if not careful, lose out on the promised land indeed. But why, when we look at the liturgical year and what is prescribed, is the call to penance now as opposed to at the beginning of Lent? It seems that we have a few weeks left remaining for ourselves before we have to truly begin this thing. This is in some ways correct. However, it is the importance of what this short season of Septuagesima represents that we find the exact spirit we are meant to have. We can find it in 2 different ways. One is from the historic aspect of it. The reason why the liturgy calls us to fast is because this is traditionally in the early church the time when those efforts did actually begin. Because those ancient fasts were much harder than the ones that we have for ourselves now in Lent. Instead, coupled with the limiting of the food taken in, it was a great limiting upon what kind of food could be taken in those early Christians. It was for them that they, for the entirety of the penitential season, no longer ate meat, no longer ate fish, no longer ate eggs or anything of dairy or alcohol or olive oil. These things were all put aside for that season. And so they worked their way into the sacrifice incrementally. Septuagesima Sunday was known in those days as Meat Fair Sunday. They said farewell to all carnal flesh food. And so that was the start of their fast. They gave up that one aspect. Meat and fish, those things were eaten no longer. Then came Septuagesima Sunday, which was the removal of all things dairy. And so it was called Cheese Fair Sunday. And so milk and cheese and various other aspects, these were now put away. And then when Lent finally arrived at Ash Wednesday, the rest of the fast began in earnest. But we also see from it, by that working into the fast of the earlier church a practical aspect for ourselves. We're not bound to do such things now, of course. However, when we want to put forth true and sincere effort into something, to actually make real striving points, to make spiritual gains, then it is something that is well to be prepared for. Too easily, we are tempted in this time from Septuagesima to Ash Wednesday to try to squeeze out the last little bits of enjoyment of our time before the fast arrives, to have our last celebrations, to have our last hurrahs in the way of food and drink and revelry. And then when it does come, it falls upon our shoulders as a burden. It falls upon ourselves as a great weight dropped from above. And the struggle is sincere and real and immediate. It is because we have not prepared. It is because we have taken on what we have not focused upon. Septuagesima is meant to be this time of preparation. It is meant to be this time of easing our way into what is hard. It is meant to be a time where we have begin to leave aside what distracts us, to leave aside the things which are temporal, to start earnestly more so seeking after what is eternal. It is a time for reflection. It is a time for prayer, so that we may gain graces to strengthen ourselves for what lay ahead. It is a time in which we could even potentially begin small aspects of the sacrifices as a means of warming our way up to the race that is to be run. When we are reflective, when we prepare ourselves, when we look to see where we can find that right balance of what we can offer in a true generosity of our spirit, while not being imprudent and overextending ourselves to something that is impossible to maintain for our own. And we will find that we, when Lent begins, are truly prepared, truly ready to gain graces, to make strides in perfection, to curb our own flesh, so that we may bring it under subjection more perfectly, so that when we transgress through the season of Lent, we may find ourselves on the opposite side, more close to the promised land than we are today. May God bless you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Salvazione vere sapete neque deitatis, et in personis proprietas, et in essentia unitas, et in maestate adoretur qualitas. Quam larunt angeli aquae ac angeli, cherubim quoque ac seraphim, qui non cessant clamare quotitie, nunca voce dicentes.
Amen.
grace, et ne nos inducas in tentationem,
sed libera nos a malo.
Unitate Spiritus Sancti Deus, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Oremus. Mundere mulieros quesumus Domine Divini Sacramentimus Ablatum, et intercedente Beata Virgine Dei Genitrice Maria, ubi arios superiores apostolis tuis Petro et Paolo aquae Beato Hugo, et omnibus sanctis, acudis nos rei universitatibus expiatus, et universitatibus expeditus. Exare Regis Domini Tui omnipotens Deus, et Prestat Sancte, Beate subsimus, incorrupte nobis, te donante serpentum, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum Filium Tuum, qui te convivere regna, in unitate Spiritus